Donna, I'll give you mine. They must have a bulk up.
I don't take them because, but the thing is, I told them, I said, I don't like CDs.
Too dry.
Well, no, I don't like the CDs because it indicates it's going to be lunch.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today. Welcome to the August 16th meeting of the City of Charleston Planning Commission. My name is Charlie Karras. I'm chairman of the commission. I'm joined by commission members Donna Jacobs, Jimmy Bailey, Sunday Lymphasis, McKenna Joyce, and including Brian Jenkins. These folks are appointed by Charleston City Council. They're volunteers. I know you appreciate their work as I do. The way we'll run the meeting today is I'll read an item from the agenda into the record. Then we'll hear from staff. They'll make any recommendation they have, and they'll hear from the applicant. Then we'll hear from anyone supporting the application, anyone that may be opposed to the application. Then we'll let the applicant respond to any concerns that were brought up. After that, we'll close the public hearing, and so the commission members will discuss, make motions, and so forth. If you get up to speak today, we've asked you to come up to the podium and tell us who you are, where you live, and if you represent someone. If you have a cell phone, I appreciate you turning it off and put it on silent, as I just did. I usually forget. And Mr. Morgan, I'll ask you to introduce any staff that will be presenting today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Christopher Morgan, planning manager here at the City of Charleston. Philip Overcash is here to my right. Omar Mohammed is also here, who's our key planner for the Planning Commission. Molly Conner is here, who's our annexation planner, and Philip Clapper, who is our clerk. And then Dale Morris, who is our chief resilience officer, is going to be making a presentation today.
Any changes to the agenda?
We have withdrawal of the zoning at 1133 Charles River Lane.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And also the 1614 Roman was marked on the agenda as deferred. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Just one question. I saw a note that came to us that said we would receive public comments in a future email, and then I note that most of these say no comments submitted with the one exception. Is that the only written comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. First item on the agenda, the minutes of March 15th, 2023. I'm always going to pick on Ms. Jacobs. I know we sent these out. Did you have a chance to look into those minutes, or anyone else?
I did, and I can read the
Okay. Ms. Jacobs moves to approve the minutes. Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Brian Jenkins. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the presentation. We welcome Mr. Morris, Dale Morris, our Chief Resilience Officer. And thank you for coming. We look forward to hearing you.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. You being excellent spices. Thank you very much. So, Dale Morris, Chief Resilience Officer. I live on Johns Island, just for the record, but I work across the city. So there you go. I was asked to give you an update on the comprehensive integrated water plan that the city is developing. This was a recommendation to the Dutch Dialogue. City Council funded it. We started the work last September, so we're about a year in. We intend to have a draft plan by the end of this year, final plan by March, early April. That is a bit of a delay. You'll see the local is supposed to be drafted sort of September, October, but work requirements for the water plan team for Union Pier is going to suspend the water plan work for a couple months. So that's just, there's not enough time today to do that. So that's our goal here. Again, the purpose of the water plan, so we have a team of consultants that are doing this for us, led by Biohabitats, Black and Beach, Wagner Ball, and Moth and Nichols, so very distinguished firms, and then with a number of subs under that. So these are just the key purposes of the water plan: the proactive, aspiration, achievable vision. So visionary, actionable, help city staff, city council, stakeholders, citizens understand what to plan for, prioritize, manage, and adapt to the current and future flood risks. We have a 25-year planning horizon on this, so this is not a typical city plan where you look for 10 years or for 25 years. We picked that date because we have a good sense, the recommendations from NOAA and the USGS and NASA that the city won't have 14 inches of sea level rise by then. So we're looking forward to doing, using modeling from the Army Corps of Engineers through the Southland Coast Comprehensive Study, interpolating that and projecting that forward in our mapping. There's no modeling in this, so there's not enough money to do modeling. For the entire city, those are tens of millions of dollars. This is mapping based off of modeling done elsewhere. Clear integration of all these other plans that have been underway in the city, developed, under development, enforced, trying to knit those together. How do we stay here? And again, these are the dates. Next slide, please. Good, so our sort of goals and values, safety first. So this is obvious, this is a best dialogues thing, this is a engineer's thing, safety first. We're prioritizing flood mitigation and flood adaptation. We want to change for good. We have a distinct mapping up of environmental justice. I'll come to that. Create resources to help propose things to help low and income folks understand their flood risk and adapt to it over time. The wealthiest folks in the community can adapt and manage. A lot of middle income folks can adapt and manage for this. Low and moderate income folks have more difficulties trying to help that. Work from the ground up. I'll show you a slide here. I'll explain that. Coordinate and communicate. So this is a whole of government effort that we need. Planning and stormwater. Planning and stormwater and transportation and all the other city agencies need to work together. This is intended to be for the city. And this is a build value. How do we invest and do this stuff so we can stay here? Next slide, please. And this is a little longer. So this is a slide. This is an image you've all seen to watch the dialogue. This is a clear slide. We can look at inhabitation and we can look at infrastructure. We have we start, the waterfront team, the Dutch dialogue team. We all believe that you need to start from what Mother Nature gave us. So understand the landforms or the water systems that we have and what's sort of subsurface, and then build from there. Understand the infrastructure that we need to support the habitation occupation. Different approach. We think this is the right one and it's been applied here. Next slide, please. So just sort of general concepts here. This is sort of conceptualization from the waterfront team. Sort of the landscape is determined by two gradients of land and water, so mud and sand and fresh water and salt water. This is sort of an interesting way to approach this. It works very well. And this will inform how the waterfront moves forward. Next slide, please. And here you can see our current landforms as described and our water systems as described, as I just did. Salt and fresh and mud and sand. And this is the current environment map. Can you go next slide, please? And you watch forward. So sea level rise is coming in. It's changing the salty areas and the fresh areas. So the salt's moving inland. It's taking more space. We're moving away from the muddy areas and moving towards sandy areas, right? So that's good. So the next slide, please. And then here you can see we have this area where we have to adapt and where we have to protect value, increase value on high ground, and slowly pull away from the low ground where it's more risky. So these are sort of concepts. And this image on the right-hand side of the slide, this is from the comprehensive plan, right? These are this sort of defend, grow, adapt, protect, and reserve parts of the comp plan. They're in the current range categories, and we're applying that here too. Next slide, please. So this is also from the comprehensive plan. You recognize this. We have current conditions. We have elevation zones. We know with sea level rise, all that's going to change. Things are going to move up. The water is going to move up. The occupation needs to move up. Cost is going to move up. So all these things move up, and we have less space to be able to stay here. So we need to consider that. Next slide, please. One of the things we have done is we've mapped per these flood risk zones. We have sort of 4 flood risk zones. We've mapped tax revenue there. And so what's at risk? So you see we have right now $20 billion or so. We have, $7 or $8 billion of that at risk in the most risky areas, but another substantial chunk of change that's at risk in this middle zone that is going to be encroached by the lower zone soon. So this is mapped. It's just going to help us. We have a whole series of economic analysis of it coming as part of this plan, but this is just to give you a sense of what that is. Next slide, please. So we have mapped every part of the city. We consider the city Daniel Island, Cainhoy, so distinct planning areas. Daniel Island, Cainhoy, Peninsula, Inner West Ashley, Outer West Ashley, James Island, and Johns Island. So these are distinct landforms, and we approach it in those terms. Here's the peninsula. If any watch the work I do with the Army Corps project, this is not surprising to anyone. The water's there. The water's going to increase. What you want to look at is sort of the blue areas where the water is a lot. It's going to come from tidal and coastal influences, and the floodplains move in those big yellow and orange areas. So more and more the peninsula becomes at risk. And you can see then these sort of darker areas is where compound flood risk is going to be really, really challenging. So we have to manage that. Again, you can see this change. This is looking forward, 14 inches of sea level rise after 2050. So our flood risks are changing, moving inland. One fortunate thing with the Charleston Peninsula is we have the Army Corps trying to help us manage this sort of storm surge risk, and it can also help us manage tidal risk and rainfall risk, as I mentioned, fellow muscos involved. Next slide, please. So if you look at, and so we have a sort of a concept plan. We have these for each planning areas. Again, the peninsula plan was relatively easy. It's the polar plan, protect the edge, stop the surge and the tides from coming in, and then develop it intensely there. But understand that we need rainfall management, stormwater management in there. So there are different ways of doing this, either infiltration, more pumping, more storage areas, and things like that. This is not new to the Washington team. This sort of came out of the Dutch Islands. So next slide, please. We come into other areas. So yeah, next slide, please. So here you have mapping for Inner West Ashley. I'll draw your attention to the area south of 17 and the area in and around Citadel Mall. Those areas are going to be substantially impacted by sea level rise, as well as rainfall trying to get out. So this is sort of a challenging area. How do we adapt to the rising seas in this area without disturbing commerce, without disturbing property owners, or helping those property owners move inland? This is hard stuff. There will be recommendations about this, but this is very true.
What areas? You said Citadel Mall and.
So you look at here, the orange and the blue areas that are here. You can see there, and then Chris will be showing sort of south of 17, Windermere.
You already underwater, son.
So yeah, some nice places there, right? It's going to become wetter, and this is a function of sea level rise. This is a function of sea level rise. Right, 13 inches in the last time you're 14 in the next slide.
And then staring at me.
So next slide, please. So we've mapped the natural infrastructure here. Mother Nature does a lot for us if we don't disturb her too much. If we help her along, she can do more for us. And so we've mapped the natural infrastructure here. You can see there's not much left on the Charleston Peninsula, but there is some left in Inner West Ashley. And we need to take advantage of that. Thin fill placement, sediment placement in the marshes to help them grow. Understanding our tidal systems and our intertidal systems as well as our wetlands. So this is there, and will help guide recommendations. Next slide, please. And so what is a concept, right? We have the polar plan for the peninsula. Here we see Inner West Ashley sort of dividing up into two distinct sea islands. You can see where the oak forest area and the Wahoo Basin are trying to come together. You can see that right in the middle there. We anticipate that's going to occur. Sea level rise is going to sort of force that upon us. So we can see this area of an area, 17, Savannah Highly is sort of one area, and Stan Rittenberg and up 61 as a just distinct area. There is high ground here, so we can develop this, but we do have to pull inward. So it's a sea island evolving concept. And again, some of the concepts guide us where our pilots is right there on the left. Next slide, please. We have the same thing. So these are the key waterways for Outer West Ashley. Again, same sort of concepts. Where's the water moving to? This is a very flat area. So an inch or two of sea level rise has a big push inward of land and water. And again, with all the development that's occurring out there, I say this: roads and roofs and rain equal rapid runoff and regret, right? So this is what's going to occur here. So we have to adapt to that. Next slide, please. We have mapped this very wonderful, rich natural system out there. Mother Nature built this thing. We've sort of interfered with it. We need to learn how to restore this going forward without sort of disturbing the occupation we have. So that's going to take some surgery, right? Next slide, please. And here you have, we think the Outer West Ashley area needs to respect its wetlands and grow them the space for water. Otherwise, it's going to overwhelm the area because it is so flat, right? There is some high ground there, but not nearly as much as in other parts of the city. Next slide, please. You come to James Island. James Island is a very difficult area to think of over the long term. It is a true island surrounded by water on all sides, and James Island Creek splitting it in half. The upper and lower portions of James Island. That James Island Creek is going to want to connect over time the sea level rise to the Stonor River. It already does at high tide. It's going to get worse or get more. There is high run there, but there's not a lot of it. And there's a governance challenge on James Island, right? There is the county, there is the city, there's unincorporated, there's the town. So we have to, sort of governance is going to have to allow us to make these changes. There are some things there that we can do, but be very careful. The sea island nature is going to become more intense. Next slide, please. And here again, here's the natural system. So there's a whole bunch of natural nature-based features that we can take advantage of. James Island is what it is because of this, and we need to elevate and sort of expand this and use it to protect us. Next slide, please. And here we see an evolving sea island, so becoming more intensely used. We have this sort of self-organized adaptation. If the governance does not enable, the governance challenges between these jurisdictions does not enable infrastructure or planning to occur in a coordinated way, and an economically efficient way, then it's going to have to be self-organized. That's a big deal, and we have to figure out what that means, but that's what we see happening. We need to limit the growth to these ridges that are out there, and we need to think about buyouts. This is an area where there's going to have to be some more buyouts that occur, because there was some development here that was done in ways that is very risky, and that risk is going to increase. Next slide, please. We have done, this is important work, we made a conscientious choice at the beginning of the water plan to also map environmental justice risk. So we have looked at the census data for low and moderate income communities, the SBI data on socially vulnerable communities. We've mapped that, and then we mapped current flood risk. We overlay that with current flood risk and future flood risk. This image is a work in progress. I am personally not happy that this image does not communicate the risk that I think it needs to do. But you get a sense we're going to try to show this. So we can focus, we can pay attention that if we're going to do a project somewhere, what other benefits can we get in that project to help environmental justice communities. So this is a work in progress, but it will be part of the final water plan recommendation. Next slide, please. We're doing a prioritization of certain flood risk mitigation and adaptation projects. These are our criteria. They're rather large in nature. They won't surprise anyone, but this is what is forming the set of recommendations or project recommendations. We will have a key pilot project recommended for each planning area, and then a number of smaller sort of projects too within that same planning area. So this is the prioritization criteria. Still working through this. Next slide, please. The number of recommendations that are coming, we have a spreadsheet with 100 distinct recommendations in it that will likely grow to 200, and then we'll condense that down and try to make good sense of it. These are the kind of things we know. None of this should be surprising you. We need to incentivize density on high ground. We need to move forward. The planning department is doing this with elevation-based zoning, expand the low and impact and conserve zone in the comp plan, develop a buyout scale program. Buyouts are done one house at a time. It's very inefficient and it's very torturous to the homeowner. Someone has flooded, repetitive flood loss, they can be bought out. It takes 3 to 4 to 5 years. It is impossible. FEMA knows this. We're working with other folks in the federal government and nonprofits to figure out how we as City of Charleston set up a buyout scale program using federal money. So that's something. Forced migration, we will recommend. It's going to cause some heartburn. 350 FE. We're at 2 right now. We think that needs to go up. We adopted an ordinance this year to ban slab-on-grade foundations in the 100-year floodplain. We agreed with the home builders and developers and others to look 2 years after implementation to look forward and say, can we expand this? Do we need to expand this? Because this is really important. You go to a house on a slab, it's really expensive to elevate it. You go to a house on stilts or on a stem wall, it's much cheaper to elevate it. So this is really important stuff, and these recommendations are coming there. Infrastructure corridors, elevate roads. And one of the things we think we're going to recommend is any annexation that would be done by the city in the future at a certain date, the property has to be on septic, it has to be on sewer. There's the sea level rise, septic systems are becoming more challenged, the drain fields are leaking, they're causing water quality problems, the EPA doesn't like that, the city is under a lot of pressure to address these issues. If we know properties are on septic right now, and we know they're going to become more problematic in the future, why would we want to import that problem? This is going to be hard stuff, right? But that's where we are at the water plan. Sorry for the length, but to give you a sense of where we are, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Commission members, first of all, what a long and short-term challenge. I mean, unbelievable. And I guess you work directly with Mr. Morgan, Planning Department. When we have developments that occur, I'm sure that, I guess he's involved, Mr. Morse is involved with, whether that's an area at risk and things like that. When development comes up.
So I have asked, I'm not part of the TRC, so I'm listening, and I will ask questions as necessary. Stormwater department, the planning department, TNT, they're responsible for all that regulatory effort, right? Not the chief resilience officer. My job is to help think longer term what the city should be doing and weigh in where needed. And again, a lot of decisions have been made 10 or 15 years ago that we're dealing with now. So I'm trying to listen and learn from questions being asked and what's being presented by the developers, the local community, and I'll weigh in where I need to. And sometimes that is behind the scenes and just quietly, but we need to think differently about how we've been developing. And it's not just Charleston. It is the coastal areas of the United States.
What a challenge you have and what a challenge we have. Again, I say long-term, it's really short-term with some of the issues going on now. Of course, when the long-term happens, I'll be underground, so we'll,
But you have grandkids. You have kids and grandkids and other family members who will still be here, so we need to.
No, I'm with you. We want to preserve there. Questions, comments, Commission? Mr. Jacobs, you go ahead.
Thank you. I've also listened to your presentation to council, which is much more extensive than it included the wall. This is not maybe directly related to the water plan, but you mentioned additional funding from the Corps for some analysis of West Ashley and James Island, and maybe Johns Island too. Is it all of the west areas, or could you define that a little bit more?
So we had this Army Corps project, 3x3x3 coastal storage management, it has different names for the peninsula surge, right? That's an Army Corps project with an Army Corps process called a 3x3x3. 3 years, 3 levels, $3 million. Peninsula project was just on surge, but we need to do more than that, and that's what we're tidal and rainfall to. Because the Peninsula project was only Peninsula and not the city, and because other parts of the city need some love too, the mayor asked for our congressional delegation to fund a tidal and inland study. The Army Corps does flood risk mitigation studies, they do surge studies, coastal storms management, and they do tidal and inland. The mayor asked in 2020, give us a tidal and inland study, please, citywide. That was authorized in 2020. So it means it's allowed to go forward, but Congress has to fund it. 2020, COVID, right? So this study was not funded, but authorized in 2020. Fiscal year 2023, so this year, Congress appropriated money to the Army Corps to start this study. This study is cost shared 50-50. So we have to pay 50%, they pay 50%. We have asked City Council in the resilience budget request for 2024 to fund the city's share of this. Then we will do a city-wide tidal and inland study. So the entire city, Daniel Island to Johns Island, and everything in between. Tidal flooding and inland flooding, rainfall flooding. The water, so stormwater department knows exactly where it floods right now in most places in the city, and if you get a crazy rain bomb, maybe you get surprised, but we know where all that is. This mapping we've done with the water plan shows where the future risks lie. So we're going to try to use stormwater's current knowledge, the water plan recommendations, future knowledge, and use that for photo areas for the 3x3 tidal and inland study. So that's what we're trying to kick off. We see why. The analysis is very clear. Inner West Ashley, Outer West Ashley, and James Island are the areas with the most risk. The older, undersized infrastructure, given the rainfall we're getting, more encroachment of the sea overrise into these neighborhoods, so we need to study there. In all frankness, and it's a good thing, Daniel Island and Johns Island, because they have followed their newer developments and they followed better development patterns. Not that there's not flooding in some places there, but they are generally much safer than these other areas over the mid and long term. So we will not exclude those areas from the study, but we have a sense from the water plan that inner West Ashley, outer West Ashley, and James Island will be a large part of the focus of this entitlement study. And it will take, again, 3 years to do this. It could take longer. It may need more than $3 million. We just ask for more money. So that's there. But once you have a report, a study analysis that is sent to Congress, and if they authorize those projects to move forward, the federal government pays 65% of it. This is a way to stretch city dollars. So the Army Corps is a sort of helping us along, like the federal government. They're helping us along here. We need to be very thankful of our congressional delegation. Senator Graham, Senator Scott, Congressman Mace, their predecessors, and Congressman Clyburn, right? They have done yeoman's work to grab our share of this federal money, right? So that's what this study is. So it's title and across the state. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And for that, all this good work that you're doing, how is that influencing our consultants for their zoning code rewrite so that we're not kind of working all these things in silos, that they're coordinate for the future?
Breaking down silos, that's my job, right? So we are working collaboratively with them. So the water plan team has met once, twice, I forget, I'm sorry. There's coordinated meetings between the water plan team and the peninsula plan team. One is planned in September, I think. Between the water plan team and the zoning clearing, right? So I've had discussions with them. We've had this 2 weeks ago. Okay, so we're doing this, and the water plan team will also be working on this union pier stuff. And that will also inform whatever happens with comprehensive plan amendment for the east side, over the line. So that is all important. We need to do that. There's a lot of knowledge around. We know a lot. We need to make sure all the knowledge gets put in the same spot and then we learn from it.
Right, Ms. Limbus.
Yes, a lot of your information is coming from sea level rise, and you just touched on it when you answered Donna's question about the infrastructure, that a lot of the infrastructure issues that I see in West Ashley and even in downtown Charleston and James Island are as a result of old stormwater pipes that none of these are related to sea level. I mean, they are indirectly related to sea level rising, but they're mostly because there's not sufficient stormwater pipes. So I guess, it's really easy to look forward and say, okay, we need to do this, this, and this, and this, but how do we rectify what's already there that is flooding? I mean, I know the base zoning and non-no slab, building on no slab, that all helps. I don't know where the money's going to come from to replace all of the infrastructure issues that we have going on everywhere.
Right. So the oral parts of the city, Peninsula, Inner West Ashley, and parts of Outer West Ashley, the infrastructure is already undersized. It's undersized because storms are dropping more rain. Warmer air holds more water. Most of the storms are now moving more slowly, so the systems are just overwhelmed. We have more development closer to our old tidal creeks, and so rapid runoff in those. And then at the end of it, sea level rise impacts this because at the end of the drainage pipe or the end of the ditch that's fitting into the tidal creek or the river, the seas are higher, so less water gets out. So we have to do both, right? We have to replace this infrastructure. So the Army Corps is helping us with a pump station upgrade at the medical district. We have a rather robust plan to understand our current shallow subsurface infrastructure on the east side, right? We've done some work in there with deep tunnels, the Alvin East project, right? Market Street tunnels, the Upper East Side, around the Ravenel Bridge, that is not so well understood. We're learning more about the existing infrastructure. We are going to have to sort of figure out, do we replace this pipe? Do we upsize the pipe? Do we keep the pipe the same size and try to store more water in the natural environment, create storage areas? Can we infiltrate more water on the upland sides of the peninsula, or on Sam Rittenberg, or on nearby Savannah Highway. This is not an either-or situation. We know our flood risk now. Stormwater knows exactly where it floods and why. We have to continue with that. But we also have to learn how to adapt to these future conditions. So it's not an either-or.
And that, I have a second question, has to do with septic systems. There is, and this is not necessarily, this further out in the city, but there's, with septic systems, I mean, in the past, a developer would never look at a septic system development. Now, that's all they're looking at because there's not the availability of sewer a lot of places. And so how is that going to work together? Because you keep seeing new now they are better septic systems, obviously, than what was done before, but the engineered septic systems now, how are we going to facilitate getting Charleston Water to get the pipes where they need to, and how is that going to help?
So when I talked about annexation, I'm talking about existing structures. So I am not the zoning expert on what level of septic system gets into how many units per acre. I don't know that. I'm sorry that I don't, but it's something I need to study on. That's fine. So what I would say is you can use septic if it's upland, not going to be tidally influenced. We can study that. You can use septic provided you have appropriate drain fill that's not going to get impacted by sea overrides. And these septic systems are on larger lots, so is the then cost there for Charleston Water to extend the pipes to it, or you use septic? Those are challenges. I can see the context of that. I don't have an answer for that, but I think what I said is not too far off. Septic is not improper everywhere. It's improper in certain places. And then for existing systems, properties annexed in the city, we should be very careful with annexing systems that are in dense areas, subject to sea level rise, that are going to cause us future economic problems.
Mr. Bailey, yes.
Thank you.
You mentioned jurisdictional challenges specific to James Island. But I feel like with a lot of the city's current infrastructure, I'm thinking mainly of roads. I mean, I think the first thing you learn when you get elected to city council is that you blame DOT for 90% of the road problems. Certainly, coastal communities, this topic is very much on our minds. But if you're a state legislator in Powdersville, South Carolina, you probably don't care. Is there a state? Do you have a counterpart at the state that's thinking about these things?
Fortunately, I do, and a very good one. So after the floods of the 2010s, the state impaneled a floodwater commission that was led by a gentleman named Tom Mulligan, very sort of charismatic, smart guy. And they made a number of recommendations, and one of them was to create a state resilience office. And this used to be the disaster recovery office, so the folks would go in and help after disaster. And they were tasked with developing a statewide resilience plan. A month ago, after 2 years of study and analysis, they released their plan. I encourage you to look at it. It is a solid plan. I was part of the development of other state plans. South Carolina did a terrific job. So we do have folks looking at this, and there was some money designated there's a number of recommendations, infrastructure, but also data collection. There's a lot of stuff we don't know about our system, our natural system. One of them is groundwater in the city of Charleston. The seas rise, the shallow unconfined groundwater is popping up. This week, our water bank team has installed 14 groundwater wells. We put in 3 a couple months ago, but 14 more this week. That's really important information. The state needs to do this statewide. Flood risk, in fact, is higher in upland areas than in the coastal areas, because the rain bonds fall in ravines in sort of, developed areas. And that causes really rapid runoff in a narrow channel. And we've built most of those narrow channels where we shouldn't have. And that rainfall is awful, right? It just knocks stuff down. So in a risk assessment, the flood risk is a little bit higher in the upland areas than it is in the coastal areas. So we do have a counterpart there. The jurisdictional issue, it's not just in James Island, but it's very apparent in James Island, it's also in West Nashville. Right, and so part of the city is in Berkeley County. How do we coordinate that, right? So one of the things we're doing, this is a long answer, one of the things we are doing, we had some climate modeling done. Someone came to us and said, we'll do climate modeling for you near mid and long term for the city. We'll do it for free. I said, nothing's for free. What do you want? They didn't want anything. It's the Woods Pole Oceanographic Group. They have a consultant arm of modeling. I got the resilience officers from North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, and the county, when we agreed that they would do the modeling for this large area. We've done it. It is disturbing. Now we're trying to develop a regional resilience plan. So the BCD COG is at this moment, we're instigators of it, we're proud of this, developing a grant application for a regional resilience water plan. So this will allow us, this water plan, our water plan goes up beyond our jurisdictions because we want to understand the upstream, downstream. In fact, we don't care about the local boundaries. Fortunately, that isn't too bad here. Upstream, downstream, we have it. But BCD COG, they're going to apply this so we understand this water system around the area. And then if that keeps up certain recommendations or ideas where we have to work with the county or the town of North Charleston to solve the problems in this basin, and we can do that efficiently because dollars don't go very far sometimes, that would be smart. So we are working in those analyses.
That's great to hear.
Other questions, any comments, questions, anyone else? Bill, we appreciate you being with us, and I'd ask with staffs agree that we hear from you at least a couple times a year, because this is so important in what we do. I greatly appreciate it. Great information. It's scary information, but we got to be aware of it. So thank you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for your work as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the first item on the agenda, well, not the first item, but the rezoning, number one is deferred, correct, Mr. Morgan? 1614 Grimble Road is deferred. Number two on the rezonings is 48 Courtney Drive, Medical District, TMS number 4601, 501044, approximately 0.31 acres. Request rezoning to include property and accommodations overlay A1. Mr. Morgan.
All right, so this is a property, small property in the midst of medical district. It's privately owned. It's on Courtney Drive. Here's Courtney Drive, which is basically between Calhoun and B Street.
Speaking of flooding, it's Courtney Drive.
From the NUSC Wellness Center and their student activities facility. One day could be a future hospital site, depending on where they built the other hospital that they were planning to do, because they built the Ashland River Tower, and then they built the Children's and Women's Hospital, and they have one more general hospital built. But anyway, so that's kind of orienting you to where the property is here. The request is to go to our accommodations overlay for the basic A1 district that would allow up to like 50 group in an instance like this. This is in our campus designated area, which is, this is from the comprehensive plan. And we have both College of Charleston and the medical district in this campus area. And the idea behind that is trying to protect those unusual types of uses that have to be in a campus type facility, like, classroom facilities, hospitals, doctor's offices, things like that, that might have unusual sizes that don't fit within a regular block pattern and things like that. There's nothing really from that campus designation that would, help us justify the accommodations use, but I'll get further into that in a minute, but there's really nothing in the comp plan that would. So looking at where accommodations uses are in this area at present, we do see that there's a large area of accommodations. This gray screen is what is accommodations designation. So all of the West Edge area has accommodations overlay, and I'll show you some of the specific sites. And then there are some accommodations designations here in the Crosstown area, just north of the Crosstown, on the Ashland River, and then over here on Calhoun Street. And we've got one of the larger hotels in the city, which is right here. It's the Marriott that's on Lockwood. It's a 347 room hotel here. We also have a Holiday Inn Express that is here that's 153 rooms. We have a new hotel that's coming by Michael Bennett into the older MUSC building that's here. That's going to be a 250 room hotel coming in that location. We have a loft hotel that would come into this location here that is approved by BAR and gone through all its other zoning approvals. I believe it's about 150 rooms. We have a new hotel coming that Jeffrey Roberts is working on. It's on Spring Street that has all its basic approvals. That would be 150 rooms here. And then we have on Lockwood, we have the Marriott Courtyard, which is 179 rooms. The Hilton Garden Inn is 141 rooms. And then no hotel has been built on this site. It's actually become a surface parking lot. The reason I bring all these up is that this area has an existing number of 949, basically 950 hotel rooms. The entire city of Charleston has 4,800 hotel rooms. That means that within proximity of this site and the medical district, we've got about 20% of our city's hotel rooms. So it's a pretty good portion of our supply right in this area. And then we've got 550 hotel rooms that are coming to this area. So we're definitely in an area of hotel room concentration. I mean, I realize King Street, Meeting Street are also areas of hotel concentration as is market, but this is an area that has a lot of concentration too. And when you couple that, the fact that they're requesting a hotel here with our interest in preserving the greatest concentration of jobs in the entire state of South Carolina, which is the medical district, over 20,000 jobs. Very, very important to our economy and to downtown because these are all really good paying jobs and very important to our region. Of course, we've all seen the changes that will be coming with Roper and all that, but the hope is that we see more medical facilities take over where the Roper facilities were. That's the city's intent, is that this stay a medical district. So that leads to our concerns with this request of bringing in another hotel where we've got lots and lots of hotel rooms already in close proximity. Add to that we have an accommodation study that didn't identify this as a site that would be appropriate for a hotel or anything like that. And we just don't think that this is a request that is something we can endorse in this location. These rooms are met already with existing hotel rooms that are here and that are planned in the surrounding area.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Is the applicant here? Would you come on, tell us who you are and thank you, sir.
Steve, I believe we've got your slides in here.
Okay, so let me just go back to that.
This one?
So we're actually, you have one that shows the building, and we'll go back to that.
This one. In your slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate it. My name is Stephen Ramos. I'm an architect here in Charleston, and I live at 48 Beauregard Street, not too far from the site. This is Mr. Bill Vogel. His family has owned the property for a long time. And before I talk about zoning and that kind of stuff, why we're doing a hotel, I thought it'd be helpful if Will just talked about the history of the site and why we're thinking the way we're thinking today.
Great, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, everyone. Will Vogel, I live on Holly Beach. So this property, the building that's currently there, was built in the 1930s by a man who used it as a primary residence. He owned it for about 10 years and then sold it to a woman who used it as a boarding house for about the next 3 decades. My father purchased it from her around 1975 after he finished medical school in USC and had his ophthalmology practice there for about 30 years. In the early 2000s, he stopped practicing medicine. He started a vision insurance company. Then the two of us ran the vision insurance company out of this office for about the next 15 years. We sold that business about 3 years ago, and the building has basically been vacant since then. We've made attempts to lease the property, no takers. The property, the building is dated. The layout's a little bit funky and strange, so we weren't able to secure anybody that wanted to lease it. So we were thinking, what's the best use of this property? And we thought, wouldn't it be great to have a place where people come and stay when their loved ones were in the hospital? It's a place they can walk to, they can easily get back and forth. There are definitely hotel rooms in the general area, but none of those are convenient to walk back and forth, especially for somebody who might be a little bit older to get around. So we were thinking, would it be nice to have a bed and breakfast or a small inn that people can get back and forth. So that's what we're thinking. Appreciate your consideration, and I'll let Steve take over.
Thank you, sir.
We go to maybe one of the street views of the building.
Got a picture where this is.
There you go. So this is what the building looks like now. So
Okay.
it's a residential structure that's been used for small offices for a long time now. And this kind of story started 5 years ago. I used to work at LS3P, and we did a lot of work for MUSC. And at that time, they asked us, they said, we're interested in having a hotel on our campus because we have a great need for transient uses. Not 1,000 rooms around the campus. We need something on campus because we have a need for the actual college, for students and their families that are coming to visit. They have a need for professors that may be visiting. They have a need for when they're trying to lure job candidates to come to MSC. That's a need. But most importantly, they have a need for people that are undergoing medical care and their families, and they need them close. And although there are 1,000 or so plus rooms that are kind of scattered around the perimeter, probably 900 of those are across highways that probably nobody in this room would cross. And so that's kind of the genesis of this hotel. It's not about just simply adding rooms for tourism. It's about addressing a need that is specific to the hospitals. And if you could go to the aerial photograph, Christopher. Perfect. Yeah, so as Mr. Morgan noted, there are a lot of hotels either existing or planned. Across Calhoun, there's a property that's been zoned, but there is no hotel currently. Of course, we have these two existing hotels. Again, I don't think anybody's crossing Lockwood Boulevard to go to the medical campus. And then there's going to be hotels here in the future, and they exist today, but we have a similar challenge of crossing Spring Street. And so this is really about pedestrian-friendly, walkable hotel. I had a personal experience regarding this about 2 months ago. My mom had a freak accident. She fractured her pelvis while walking her dog. And they live in Dunes West. And she was at MUSC for 1 week while she recuperated from surgery. And then they moved her to Roper for her to do her rehab. And so every morning, my stepfather came to my home on Bogart Street, and I drove him to the front door. The very first day, I tried to show him how to use the parking garage and how to get out of it and get to the hospital. And although he's in good health, he's in his 80s, and he's not that good of a driver. And a parking garage is kind of frightening, and I could tell right away that it wasn't going to work out. So I basically kind of delivered him door to door for 2 weeks. And I know if he had the opportunity to stay near so he could be closer to his wife of 40 years, I know he would have taken that opportunity. And so that's why we're here tonight. I've been involved with a lot of hotels in Charleston. Most of them are on King Street and Meeting Street. This was an unusual case where there was a very specific need. And so I understand the intent of the city plan, and I understand why they didn't say this is where hotels should go. But we know that there's a need. We know that this is a small project that will help address a need, but it will make a difference. I also know that hotels have been located in areas of the city to protect neighborhoods. We typically don't put them in neighborhoods. This will not impact any residents of Charleston. It's only going to help the hospital district that it sits in. And so I ask you to kind of think about this as a unique case, because that's what this is. It is a unique situation. All of the property surrounding here is owned by MUSC. One last story. You mentioned that this is a job center, which it clearly is. In one of our discussions with MUSC, when we talked about it, they asked us if there was going to be a bar at this hotel. And I thought they were joking, but they have needs other than just healthcare. Okay, so there are other ancillary uses that support a thriving college district and a thriving hospital. We're not actually planning to have a bar, but I just brought that up because it highlights that there's a lot of people that are working here that need to eat and drink, and there's people that need to stay close by. And it's just not pedestrian friendly to the other accommodations. I think in the future, there will likely be some that are more pedestrian friendly, but this is a really good opportunity. It's an existing structure. It's got stained wood on the inside. It kind of looks like it's an old bed and breakfast. So we just feel like it's a win-win. But we understand where the city staff is coming from. But we ask you to give it consideration because we think it's a great project.
Thank you, Mr. Ramo. Great, thank you. Is anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application? Is anyone here in opposition to the application? Just for the record, there's one written comment that we got from San Francisco Preservation Society in opposition to the application, I believe, so you'll have that. Any final comments from the applicant? There's nobody here in opposition, but any final comments?
Well, I did read that there was a comment from Sam Spence with the Preservation Society, and I believe he referred to it as kind of a one-off zoning and that the city should uphold its standards. And I certainly can appreciate the intent of that comment, but there's a reason we have these board meetings is so that we can discuss individual projects. And we feel like we have a unique case that will make a positive improvement.
Yes, sir, thank you. That'll close the public aspect of this. Commission members, questions, comments, motions?
I have a question. How many, you might have said this, but how many bedrooms are proposed?
How many rooms?
Or have you
Yeah, so the existing structure could probably hold about 12 rooms. We'd like to add a small addition in the back. But we don't plan to add much more than that because then we'd have to have more parking.
So I think you said, they say 50 rooms or no?
So the request is for the A1, which allows for up to 50,
Okay,
but it's likely to be more like a 15-room inn at the end of the day.
I got you. Okay, so it'd be the existing structure with some additions.
That's correct.
Thank you. Other questions, comments?
And you already have parking to accommodate the rooms?
Yes, ma'am. So there is a survey in the package, and there's existing surface parking that wraps around the building. And so it would be more than adequate. I think there's about 19 spaces currently. So for a 15-room inn, you're looking at about 12 cars.
And what's the size of the lot, the entire lot size?
It's a third of an acre.
A third, okay, I probably missed that.
Yep, it's
A
on.
third of it, okay.
Thank you. Commission members, Ms. Jacob?
I drove by this just to refresh my memory because I'm retired from the university. And you're right on about needing places for people to stay. And I thought about this carefully because I saw where what the city's recommending. And I'm actually conflicted because I understand these little one-offs everywhere. We build overlay zones for a reason. And I remember when I first came on the commission, we did an accommodations addition overlay way out at Citadel Mall. And I thought, and I thought the overlay district was along the spine of the peninsula. And there were reasons for us to look out there at the time and consider it. And we put forward the motion to approve that. I'm going to go through for a minute what my concerns are. It's very difficult when we do these one-offs at the Planning Commission because we kind of set a precedence for the next one-off with an excuse, and then we start having to pick a winner and loser. But in this situation, you're right on about Mount University. The hardest thing when people come there, they come there to stay for health care. They come there as family members to assist with health care. They come there to just look at the campus because they're going to maybe go to school there. Or they come for maybe a month and they need maybe a place to stay that's on campus to walk. And you're right about the fact that there's a lot of hotels, but only the Comfort Inn and maybe that Marriott Courtyard are walkable. Everything else you're going to be Ubering because we park our people across those streets and they don't walk to the campus. And they're right behind those hotels. And so then people have to drive to our parking decks that can't even accommodate anything. So I'm not going to make a motion yet because I want to see if we had a little discussion about this because of this conflicting thing. But I think it's a really important use, and the fact that they're going to not tear down the building and accommodate the building. And I drove over there, drove through the parking lot. It's currently a pay to park. Like when you're there for the day, you pay them a lot to park, and there's plenty of parking on the site.
You're making a motion, I'm sorry.
I'm not gonna make a motion
Oh,
yet,
you're
because
not
I wanted to hear, I'm gonna discuss a little
You
bit.
know, I was prepared to absolutely say no to this, and I'm still very conflicted. Like Ms. Jacobs says, I believe that once we do a one-off in the next door, and it could be a larger hotel, they could buy the property next door, and we're in the accommodations district, and they could buy the next door, and they could buy the next door, and it could be 100 room in. Hopefully it wouldn't be, but that is a risk we take if we do a one-off. And I'm actually torn because I think, you know, you're saying that you're going to keep the building, but there's nothing there that's going to say in the future that that's going to be the case. And the zoning goes from the accommodation zoning goes with the land. So if somebody else sells it down the road, we have no control over that. So I'm concerned about that, but I also never thought about what you just discussed, and Donna emphasized. I think that there's a concept there. I'm just concerned about the challenges.
If we could see the aerial view again, because you can see, like, for example, right next door is the Gazy's Cardiac Research Institute. We are not building a hotel in there. As they pointed out, the rest of the property is owned by the medical university, and they have future plans. The far corner, I mean, I used to work there, so I know most of these. The far corner is being redeveloped as like the health professional building. We have the psychiatric unit back in there. There are a couple other small houses in there, but I think MUSC already has future plans for those. And they're not individually owned like this one. This is a one-off individually owned in the middle of all of the medical university campus.
I would just like to state too also that the existing hotels have shuttles for their to use to port people over to the medical center. And if Chris can go back to that screenshot where you have all of the current hotels and the ones that are, the one that had the grayed out grid, where all the hotels exist. Yes, a lot of those hotels off of Lockwood and on by the Days Hands, they have shuttles. They do provide shuttle services over, and I'm not necessarily saying this like I know this for a fact, but I know that shuttles exist at those hotels to cart people throughout the city on the peninsula because it's the peninsula of its size. So I'm just wondering, I know that you said that you would like to put a 15 rooms there because it would be a place where they wouldn't necessarily have to, it would be walkable. That's the key word, is walkable versus take a shuttle or Uber or anything like that. So I'm conflicted too. I understand the need. However, I see what the city is saying.
Right. Other commission members? Ms. Bailey?
Well, I think that you said your father is a bad driver on the public record. I just want to make sure you understand that this is recorded.
And he's watching on YouTube.
We're not traffic and transportation. We're land use, okay, just say.
I'm somewhat swayed by this idea that a campus potentially needs an accommodations use. It's not an apples to apples because we're a different part of the city, but I remember when this came up at my alma mater at South Carolina, and the university actually built an inn right in the middle of campus. Could MUSC build an inn with campus zoning? I'm just curious.
They would have to go through the
Same process? Doesn't matter who the owner is. But I think where I'm torn is the same place Ms. Limpis is that if we approve it, it's when the Fogels no longer own this, what happens?
I hear all the old, and I agree with you, and I understand the concerns, but I think the main concern is commission members of the property, the zoning passing of the property, other adjoining properties that could be attached to this, things like that. And I feel for what you're doing. I am gonna make a motion to deny the application, based on what I'm hearing. So,
Can I just clarify, just to reiterate what Ms. Jacobs said, so the only private parcel, they're all MUSC, so the ability to join parcels for other hoteliers to come in is just very unlikely
Right.
to buy from MUSC, so just wanted to
no,
clarify.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. I'm gonna make a motion to deny the application. I hear you, I understand. But I think it does open a door that we gotta be careful what we open, so I make a motion to deny the application. There's a second other discussion. There's not a second. The motion's dead. We do have to make a decision on this one.
One of the things I was curious about was you said that no one was interested. And I sometimes get worried about, I mean, I totally appreciate the issues with this sort of specific, making an exception for the accommodations overlay. I understand the slippery slope there. But there are a couple of things. I think, like you said, it's not unusual for there to be campus inns or something like that. I think that's a big deal. I know my husband went to UVA. There's a lot of that there. It's really, they have visiting professors, people coming. It's a great, I think, addition to the university. And then the walkability, I think, is important. I've run on the perimeter of the peninsula or down Rutledge, but you can't really go down President. It's just not possible. So I do understand that there's a walkability issue, especially for the elderly patients in the hospital and that type of thing. But also just the fact that there wasn't a lot of interest in the property for other uses, like an office space or something like that. I don't know in the future if MUSC would maybe buy it, but I worry about things just sitting vacant and not being used. I don't think that that's a good use of property either, so.
So do we have a motion on the application? I made a motion. It wasn't seconded. Is there a motion? Some other discussion? We do need to have an answer on this.
Well, I mean, if it's just to facilitate more conversation, I'd second it.
Okay, yeah,
I'll second the motion to facilitate more conversation. I want to ask Christopher, what is kind of paint a worst case scenario picture of, this scenario, the practical worst case scenario of what could happen there if the Fogels no longer own it and it has this zoning.
It's torn down.
I mean, but practically, does the site really lend itself to going to the max on what this overlay would allow for?
I believe there had been an application on the site for demolition for DAR. Was that approved? It was. It was. So it did get approval for DAR for demolition. So somebody could, using that demolition, buy
Straight
it
up.
and build a 4-story hotel. They are limited in height to
50 rooms.
4 stories and 50 rooms.
So it's not gonna be the building that was there.
I mean, they got a approval for demolition. I know that now they're talking about saving the building, but I don't,
Oh, yeah, but that's certainly have a demolition.
just for the records, I made a motion to deny. I think you,
I second it.
okay, Ms. Bailey seconds it. Discussion on the motion.
I think we do really need to discuss this, because if we end up going against what staff has recommended, we really need it on the record that we just didn't do it willy-nilly. So the next time things come up, it won't be a situation where they go, well, y'all passed it last time, why are you picking a winner and loser here? So I think we need to have a discussion before we make a decision.
That's fine, but my
This,
motion is to
because-
support staff's recommendation.
Right, I understand that, but
My
if we
concern is
go against that
adding
discussion-
additional hotel rooms in Charleston. That's my biggest concern. And so I'm probably gonna vote with the motion, because I don't want to see that.
Right.
Even though I think that this
Okay.
concept is good, in my
I feel
heart
for-
of hearts, I just can't do it. I mean, we got so many, and we just have to pull the plug.
Right.
And
Any
it's
other
not-
discussion?
And also too, with Chris saying that there was once it's demolition on the table, is that Has
And
that,
that runs with the land, I forget how long that lasts. I think that knows. How long is it?
2 years.
2 years.
Thanks.
And that was in like the last
Any
year.
other questions or comments?
gotcha.
Any other questions, comments? If not, there's a motion to deny the application. I made the motion, second by Mr. Bailey. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone in opposition to the application?
I'm gonna vote in opposition,
Okay.
just because to show that we
Okay.
consider this.
Okay, so it's, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 in favor and 2 opposed. So the motion denies. Sorry, sir. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
We hear you.
4 and 2. 2 or 2 Jacobs and,
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you all. The next item on the agenda is number 3, under rezonings, which would be 1614 Western Street, James Island, TMS number 425-130022, approximately 0.21 acres. Rest zoning from single family SR1 to LB. Mr. Morgan.
so this is a location on James Island on Polly Road. To orient you all, the Walmart is here, I think probably most of you remember that. George Griffith Boulevard is right here. This is an area that has a lot of, older houses that front on Folly Road. There's an older house on this parcel here, there's an older house, an actual subject parcel. Both of those front the, Wilton Street area. And then the areas that, the parcels that are shown in white without the colors on them, those are in the town of James Island. But again, there are more houses that front on Folly and on Wilton in that area. In our comprehensive plan, again, we don't make recommendations for the parcels that are in the town, but in the parcels that are in the city, this was designated for suburban designation, or wait, I'm sorry, suburban edge, excuse me. Suburban edge, right? So basically, essentially residential use on the site, as opposed to a more commercial aspect that you would see with limited business. In addition, one of the principles we've typically followed when we have had commercial rezonings along key corridors is we've only rezoned those parcels that actually have frontage on the key corridors. We've shied away from these corner or side parcels that carry the commercial use into the side streets. And in this instance, it would carry that further back into the side streets. These are some of the reasons that we've had concerns about this one. Here you see the basic land use designations in the town of James Island, where you've got the office residential right here at the very corner, and then single family residential here. So it's essentially surrounded on these sides by single family residential, even in the town. And there's a big difference between SR1 and limited business. I do believe that the request is part of an effort to build a gas station on all 4 of these parcels here. And we just have concern that it's a further commercial encroachment into the neighborhood. And so we've been, with similar circumstances like this around the city, we recommend disapproval and recommend disapproval.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Is the applicant with us? Come on up and tell us who you are.
Hi, my name's Ashley Klein. We have an applicant, RCGP, developer in Dallas. This is one of our big tenants that we work with across the country. This is the site that we are looking at. Yes, in fact, however, I don't know if you're familiar with the site. It does not have a stop sign or a street light at the intersection. We have already spoken to DOT, state DOT, and we as developer have agreed to install a light at that intersection at our cost. I think there's a need for that there currently. I feel like there is synergy with the Walmart and what we're proposing. The C-store is a very synergetic, this C-store that we're proposing is very synergetic with Walmart as nationally. I understand your concern about Wilton Street, that access point there with the one residential location and with it being around residential. However, we have spoken with the city. We're more than willing to do elevated facade. We'll do a screening behind residential. We're more than willing to work with staff and work with the city to do what it takes to get this rezoned.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. And I'm gonna ask, I don't think there is anyone in favor or anyone in opposition to the application. So would you like to say anything, sir?
No.
All right, thank you. You're obviously in support of the application, I would think.
I am in support.
Thank you, sir. So that'll close the public aspect of this. Ladies and gentlemen,
I'm gonna move to support the city on this one. And as you all know, I have always advocated when we go around the corners with heavy commercial, it's a real slippery slope into the neighborhood. I drove over there this weekend and that corner lot, if Christopher could please bring up the Google area, it currently has, I'm sure it'll get torn down for some other reason, but it currently has like a duplex on it that sits under those trees. So it's current housing right now. The lot behind it is a good house right behind it. And the property across the street is large with nothing on it for sale, with the office residential. And I live, as well as some of us live, in areas where there's major roads with big commerce around it, and the residential areas come right up to it with land that's used for soft uses, residential offices. But when I heard 4 corners for a gas station, and I drove it all through that little neighborhood, we're gonna lose two housing. When we need housing, we're gonna lose housing to support this. I just cannot, in good faith, on everything we talked about and everything we do to protect neighborhoods, and that's what Suburban Edge is for, to protect a neighborhood, I cannot support this.
so is that a motion, Ms. Jacobs?
That's a motion to
Deny the application?
deny the
Okay,
application.
thank you.
Mr. Morgan, can you please on the map, is that, show us where you were? Or where you can go back, that one, it's gonna be right there, right? Go back to
The yellow square.
the yellow square, okay, all right.
Right there.
And it's very deep in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
When you
I've
drive- when
passed
you
that
drive-
area.
when you
Yes, I'm
drive
a
it, it's-
comments,
it's a-
questions, or second to Ms. Jacobs' motion?
I second, if there are no more comments from
There's
Commissioner
still, even though it
Davis.
says a motion, there can still be plenty of comments.
Okay,
We can
I
still
second
discuss.
that
So
motion.
Ms. Jacobs makes a motion to deny the application, second by Ms. Bryant Jenkins. Other comments, questions? Mr. Bailey, Ms. Lapis, anything?
Yeah. I mean, I'm.
We're looking at maps.
We're just
Okay.
looking
Looking at that to confirm things.
Okay. Anyone else? Do you want me to know? I don't want to interrupt y'all if y'all was discussing that. No, if y'all discussing this particular thing, I don't want to stop you.
Make a dinner plan.
And they're making a reservation already.
We're ready.
Okay, all right. So there's a motion by Ms. Jacobs, second by Ms. Bryant Jenkins to deny the application. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So it's unanimous. It's six in favor of the motion, to none otherwise. So thank you. Appreciate your comments. Ordinance amendments, number 1, ordinance to amend Article 2, Part 6, Section 54-233, which is Chapter 54 of the Code of the City of Charleston ordinance, to revise the board member composition requirements for the board BOA. Can we take these together? We need to take them separately, Ms. Morgan?
I mean, you probably should do separate votes
Okay.
on them, but it's.
I'll read them all into the record. How about that? Number 2 is the ordinance to amend Article 2, Part 11, Section 54-269, Chapter 54 of the Code of the City of Charleston zoning ordinance to revise the board member composition requirements of the design review board. Number 3 is an ordinance to amend Article 2, land use regulations, Part 2, permitted uses by base zoning district, Section 54-207, P of Chapter 54 of the Code of the City of Charleston zoning ordinance to add the commercial transitional CT district to the list of base zone districts.
We're on number 1 under ordinance amendments.
No, I understand, but you said I could read them all to the record.
Oh, okay, sorry.
She said we could take them together and not vote them on them separately.
Yeah, they need to be voted on separately, but if you want to read them, right?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Base zoning districts where conditional use provisions may apply. So, Mr. Morgan, you want to discuss number 1?
Sure, okay. And number 1 and 2 are basically identical. And this is an effort to broaden the pool of potential applicants that we could have for our board of architectural review, our boards of architectural review, and then also for our design review board. At present, we allow for non-citizen owners or principals of design-oriented and other businesses in the city to be on the BAR, you don't actually have to live in the city as long
And
as.
that's either VAR, the small or large?
Correct, or it would also be DRB. But in this instance, we would broaden that to be any employees of those firms. Because the feeling was that gives more people the opportunity to serve in DAR. They're still a part of the city because they're working for a firm that's located in the city, even though their residents may not be in the city. Because we constantly have trouble finding people who are willing to serve, and particularly those boards, because there are a lot of conflicts and the folks are very busy and things like that. And so we think this.
Oh, and we have no conflicts on this board.
So anyway, so that's what it would allow for, and
Okay.
I think there was so we're recommending approval on that, and so that's for BAR boards, and then we also have the same thing for DRB.
So let's
And
take,
with DRB, there is one difference. In DRB, we are allowing for a lay person to be added to the DRB, and that was a request from one of our council members to have it not just be design professionals, but also somebody who might just be interested in.
let's take number one. Is there a motion on number one? Does anyone like to be heard? I don't think so. So Ms. Lampus moves for approval, second by Ms. Jacobs. All in favor of number one ordinance amendment or discussion? Any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's 6 in favor, none opposed. Number two, regarding the design review board.
I would like to have a little bit of discussion about this layperson on DRB. I stand before the DRB on a regular basis, and I've also watched council with their concerns about the influence of DRB on commercial corridor review. I do have concerns that just an average person who's interested coming to design review for our commercial corridor, absolutely no background, is going to cause a little bit of an issue. I'm sure that if we don't approve this, it will get overridden in council because they have very strong opinions about this. But I personally have some concerns about it.
How many total people on the DRB?
I believe it's 7.
7, so one, they want one person to be a layperson? I don't have an issue with one person. If it was more than that,
Well, I just thought we should discuss that
Yeah.
because
I
I
mean,
think.
I mean, a layperson could work for an architectural
Well,
firm.
they already are adding
Right.
employee. What they want is somebody with no vested interest
A
in.
commercial real estate agent that's used to being,
Right.
I mean, you're talking about, I guess layperson is a housewife that, has,
it's interested and concerned and ready to listen. So, I don't think a layperson.
I actually think it's a good thing.
I mean,
I don't think it's bad.
Just wanted to discuss it
Nope,
because.
I hear you.
Because up till now, first we've had design professionals on the board, then we added alternates because there's, once again, so many conflicts. Now we're adding layperson, and I do know what they go through because I sit before them on lots of issues. And I just thought, since we're adding the layperson in there, it's worth a conversation, and we don't have any downstream problems.
the challenge is conflict of interest with a
We're
lot of
talking
these
about
DRB people. I mean,
Right.
they've got, they've
they
worked
do.
with a lot
They're
of.
detailed people.
Well, they've worked with a lot of these clients, and so it's a conflict of interest for them to get on that board. I
Yes,
mean,
it is.
and that's the challenge. But
I'm not
Unless,
issue-
and this board, this layperson would have the same requirements for continuing education independent of this, right, Christopher? Because the
Sure.
rest of the board has
Okay.
continuing education because of their preference.
Christopher, are you
Well,
comfortable?
no, the layperson would also have the continuing education requirements.
That's right,
Yes,
that's right,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Are you comfortable? Are you comfortable? And
Oh,
the
yeah,
staff
yeah,
comfortable
yeah,
with
yeah,
this?
we're comfortable with that.
Okay, so is there a motion?
I'll move for approval. I just wanted us to discuss.
We had the conversation. Thank you. I agree.
We did it, so we're just redoing the motion, because I already seconded her motion.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And we already did this one. Didn't we vote on
No, we
that?
didn't vote on this.
did
That was
it
first.
first.
He wanted to take them separately. So.
Okay.
A motion by Ms. Jacobs, second by Ms. Lampus. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That's 6 in favor, none opposed. The last one,
And so this one is very different. It's about affordable housing. And it lets you have different sizes of units in a range of districts. And it was just an inadvertent error that we left off the commercial transitional district. Because you'll notice we have all these diverse residential districts and limited business, general business, light industrial, so we wanted to add in commercial transitional because we do have some affordable housing coming on a track that's owned commercial transitional, and this would benefit from that.
Okay. You know, I had one other comment on last and thinking about it, that a layperson could be Miss Jacobs. What a great addition she'd be to any board.
That's right.
Seriously, I mean, I'm being
I
serious.
just thought we should
Because you
talk
study
about it
things,
because
so,
it's,
you know. But unfortunately, you're a layperson, just like me. You're just a commoner, I guess,
I
but
am just a
anyway.
commoner.
Anyway,
I'm a commoner.
so,
I move for approval.
great,
I
Mr. Bailey
second it.
moves to
I wanna
favor.
watch everybody jump to moving for commercial transitional real fast if we
So,
don't get this
Mr. Bailey
approved right
moves to
now.
approval, Ms. Bryant Jenkins, seconds.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No, so that's 6 in favor, none opposed. Last item is,
That's withdrawal.
right, so that, I think concludes, yes.
It's an annexation,
Oh.
and then there's PSD up to them.
We're disappointed we don't have any annexations, that's okay, you had a lot of them last month, so.
I have once the minutes are over, I have a question, well, I need to put on the minutes too, I have a question, because I was always under the impression of this when I was chair. And is the chairperson allowed to move or make a motion?
No.
Yes,
Under Robert's rules.
Robert's rules of order,
I'm
yes.
asking Mr.
I'm not a Robert's Rules expert.
I'm gonna say, I read it and I also heard it on several council committees
Well,
where they're the chair.
I
and
never
can-
did it, I never moved for approval
I
because
do
was,
it reluctantly, but I have talked to the city attorney and she said I could do that.
she did, okay,
Yes.
but that's, I never did, so I
Because I
just,
hear it all the time
I
on
had that
council
question.
when the chair can't.
With the
make
city
a motion.
attorney, I asked before I made that, and I asked the city attorney, the young
I
lady.
think I asked Frank too,
She said,
when
yeah.
we were here, and he said.
And Frank, if you move sometimes Frank he would rarely make a motion, but to move a motion just to do something, if we're stagnant,
You
sometimes
said
you
you just wanna move it forward.
well, one way or the other.
I mean, you're impatient.
Well, we're not going, so anyway, but the city attorney
But
has.
that's, okay, that's,
Yeah.
I just putting that record on, because I don't want
like it.
anybody to
Yeah.
challenge us on any
Right.
kind of approval down the
Right.
road with
Or deny it,
not, or, you know, that we deny something, and they come back
Right.
to us and said,
And I
Charlie
think-
should not have made, I mean,
Right.
that's what hit me, that Charlie should not have made that
Right.
motion. So,
According to Google, Charlie's right.
I will make a
Depends on
note
which
that,
Robert
please
rules
everyone note that board appreciation is a
I've never
card
seen
on
it.
your desk.
Thank you
Never
for
seen an
bringing that up.
So, please try to come. I've gone in the past and it's just really a reception. It's more of a social thing.
Yes,
And,
it's purely a social thing. There'll be some libations and
Yeah,
some.
no, good food, there's some good.
I've never seen an invitation in real life.
No,
for
no,
it,
she's
so
an
there's-
email.
Yes.
Something I could actually put on my.
It's a small token of our appreciation.
I don't know, are we getting a stipend?
Sunday, RSVP by August 25th.
Oh crap, I didn't even see that.
Yes, I know it's in the very bottom.
So I hope you all come. It's a beautiful event.
It really is a beautiful spot.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you all. Thank you all. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, well directed.
Okay.
Well directed, yeah. You did well directed.
Ms. Jacobs?
I just had one thing I wanted to just tell everybody that we're in progress with, and this is long, the Gullah Geechee Historic Preservation Project informational sessions, because as we heard in a previous planning commission meeting, the